It is described as nothing short of a humanitarian crisis by an alliance of independent child advocates. Tonight they are calling for a national strategy that deals with the critical challenges facing Canada's Aboriginal children. These government-appointed watchdogs come from across the country, and they held a media briefing in Ottawa today. They say that education, health and safety of our First Nations children lags far behind other Canadian kids, and they say the gap is widening. Our Mid-Island Bureau Chief Jonathan Bartlett has the story.
Hudson, the child advocates say that despite billions of dollars spent on programs, Aboriginal children are more likely than non-Aboriginal children to end up in poverty, victims of violence and sexual exploitation, and with a suicide rate 5 to 7 times higher than non-Aboriginal youth. The newly elected chief of the Nanaimo First Nation agrees that what we're dealing with is a national humanitarian crisis.
The stats in British Columbia continue to be horrendous for First Nations communities. By far the majority of the children in care are Aboriginal, and First Nations governments and First Nations communities are anxious to find ways to meaningfully address this issue, which is really a crisis.
Today in Ottawa, government-appointed watchdogs announced they are asking the Prime Minister to consider a national strategy on Aboriginal children.
Today, following National Aboriginal Day on Monday and on the eve of a G8 summit focusing on the health of children and women throughout the world, we are asking Canadians to hear the voices of children and youth in our own country. We are calling for Canadian action to help Aboriginal children and youth.
The group says despite billions spent on programs, there is a widening gap between Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal children. First Nation children more likely to be in government care, in jail, and less likely to graduate. Suicide rates are up to 7 times higher, and they're more often victims of poverty, sexual exploitation, and violence.
We don't see the outrage that the pain and suffering of these children warrants, and we don't see the action that caring people should be calling out for to lessen the misery in our midst.
Chief White says many of the issues surrounding Aboriginal children come down to jurisdiction.
The key element of every government system is to have jurisdiction over ourselves and over our families. And that has been taken, that jurisdiction has not been recognized by either the federal government or the provincial government.
For those working on the front lines of the challenges facing children in their community, the solution is making sure the funds reach those who need it the most.
If we could offer way more programs at a community level by First Nations people, I think it would be more effective.
Right from European contact to residential schools to, you know, the 60s scoop, where there's a lot of loss, there's a lot of that separation, and you know, take the, you know, the potlatches and that removed. We're looking at trying to, you know, get that back.
We have the primary responsibility to care for our children. We need to fix the system as it is currently, and we need to start building a better system for the future.
A future that is hopefully better than the one facing today's Aboriginal youth. That alliance of child advocates want an urgent meeting of First Ministers, Aboriginal leaders, and youth delegates. They're also calling for the appointment of a National Children's Commissioner with a special focus to improve oversight and accountability for Aboriginal children's programs. Hudson?
All right, Jonathan Bartlett reporting. Jonathan, thank you.
You're welcome.